Distinguished guests, heads of state, government and UN officials, leaders of global companies, representatives of the media, academia, NGOs and young global leaders. I'm very honored and privileged to have this opportunity to address the World Economic Forum in Davos. I would especially like to extend my appreciation to Professor Klaus Schwab and the organizers of this influential gathering of leaders who are committed to improving the state of this planet. Over the past few years, despite my isolation from much of the world, I have been able to follow closely the global response to the economic downturn through listening assiduously to radio broadcasts. While the challenges were immense, the response was both swift and strong. Of course, much still remains to be done. Our global interdependence has compelled and resulted in increased cooperation. In this context, however, I would like to speak on behalf of the 55 million people of Burma who have, for the most part, been left behind. We yearn to be a part of the global community, not only to be economically and socially connected, but also to achieve the domestic political stability and national reconciliation that would enable us to fully address the needs of our people. Economic policies linked to human development and capacity building are the best path to the achievement of stability in a democratic transition. We have already missed so many opportunities because of political conflicts in our country over the last 50 years. Despite an abundance of natural resources, Burma's development has lagged far behind its neighbors. Our government annually spends about 40% of our GDP on the military and barely 2% on health and education combined. The young people of Burma need the kind of education that has enabled young global leaders, some of whom are present at this gathering, to excel so early in their careers. We need investments in technology and infrastructure. We need to counter and eventually eradicate widespread poverty by offering opportunities that will allow the entrepreneurial spirit of our people to be gainfully harnessed through micro-lending programs. The National League for Democracy has, in fact, embarked on an experimental microcredit scheme on a very small scale. We need to address the tragic consequences of preventable diseases, particularly in conflict zones and rural areas. At the same time, we also need to pay close attention to the costs and collateral damage of our development, whether environmental or social. These, however, can be contained if we plan ahead responsibly. In addition to these enormous challenges, we also need to reform our legal system that we might be able to attract foreign direct investment and guarantee the rule of law. I believe that as necessary steps towards integration within the global community, Burma must achieve national reconciliation, political stability, and economic growth grounded in human resources development. Without the first two, which are essential for the basic requirements of good governance, such as transparency, accountability, credibility, and integrity, social and economic development will remain mere pipe dreams. I would like to request those who have invested or are thinking of investing in Burma to put a premium on respect for the law, on environmental and social factors, on the rights of workers, on job creation, and on the promotion of technological skills. Such an approach would not only be in line with a global sense of responsibility, it would lead in the long run to greater benefits for all concerned. I look forward to the day when there will be a political and social environment that is favorable to a wide range of investments in Burma. We are certainly in need of innovation and diversification if our country is to fulfill the aspirations of its people and catch up with the rest of the world. I would like to appeal to all those present at this gathering to use their particular opportunities and skills as far as possible to promote national reconciliation, genuine democratization, human development, and economic growth in Burma. that our people may in turn be able to make their own contribution towards a safer, happier world. Thank you.
We have had 50 years of military rule, and during this 50 years, our education system has tottered. It has tottered badly. At one time, Burma was the country with the best education system in Southeast Asia. Our standards were very high, respected the world over.
Once the military regime had taken over, the lights went out one by one. The education system got worse and worse for two main reasons. One was that the government was no longer accountable to the people. Secondly, a dictatorial government does not want its people to think too hard. And that is why they did not put the right kind of emphasis on education. They did not want education as a means for sharpening people's intellect, as a means for increasing people's ability to analyze. I have often thought that the saddest thing about Burma over the last few decades has been the lack of campus life for our university students. Campus life means a life in which young people can create their own world or make the world their own. They have the freedom and the facilities to do so. Our young people in Burma have not had this freedom for the last few decades. University life has been shattered.
Our young people have not known campus life for decades. The focus of the military government was on maintaining discipline, not on providing education. Young people gathering at the university campus were considered dangerous. They were looked upon as would-be demonstrators, young troublemakers who would demand the fall of a government. Of course, young people like to voice their opinions and also to oppose what governments do if they think that governments are not doing what they should be doing. But to try to destroy campus life in order to keep our young people quiet is to destroy the future of our country. There are no residential universities in Burma. Added to this, hostels are not allowed to be built within the vicinity of universities. These are steps deliberately aimed at keeping our young students separated from one another, that they may not gather together and become a force for change, which young people need to be.
Right. It was here at this school where opposition to colonial rule first took hold. It was here that Aung San edited a magazine before leading an independence movement. It was here that U Thant learned the ways of the world before guiding it at the United Nations. Here, scholarship thrived during the last century, and students demanded their basic human rights.
Education is the foundation of human dignity.
The most important thing for me about Oxford was not what I learned there in terms of set text and a set books we had to read, but in terms of a respect for the best in human civilization. Democracy and democratic values have to be embedded in our education system if we are to make our society a sound democracy.
The future of this country will be determined by the education of its youth.
University of Sydney and the University of Technology, Sydney, to the stage. Professor Vicky Sara, AO, Chancellor of the University of Technology, Sydney. Belinda Hutchinson. Belinda Hutchinson, AM, Chancellor of the University of Sydney. Professor Ross Milbourne, Vice-Chancellor of the University of Technology, Sydney. And Dr. Michael Spence, Vice-Chancellor of the University of Sydney. And now, I'd like you to join me in welcoming Aung San Suu Kyi to the stage.
Aung San Suu Kyi လူထုကောင်းဆောင်ဒေါ်အောင်ဆန်းစုကြည်ရောက်ရှိလာပြီဖြစ်ပါလေလောကနဲ့မင်္ဂလာကျေးဇူးတော်မှာအောင်စီရန်ဒီ
D.K. Rajan.
Yes, Rajan, yes.
I'm a retired civil servant. There is not very many people who are not moved by the suffering of the people, displaced people, Rohingyas. And it is not unfair, it is unfair to say that you yourself are not moved by it. But many of your critics, well-meaning though they are, they seem to suffer selective amnesia in not addressing graver similar situations elsewhere. And also among those innocent people, extremists embedded in them who have perpetrated similar abuses on people of other faith. Now, my question is, Your Excellency, what is the time frame of your government in solving this very pressing issue, which is very important for economic development? Thank you.
What is the time frame for resolving? Which one do you know? Sorry, Mr. Rajan, do you mean Rakhine or do you mean the Panglong?
Do you mean the peace process or I'm not quite sure. Well, it's very difficult for us to put a time frame on it by ourselves unilaterally because we have to work with Bangladesh in order to do that. So a time frame can be decided only by our two countries working together. The IDPs have to be sent back by Bangladesh. The returnees have to be sent back by Bangladesh, and we can only welcome them at the border. That is part of our agreement. So it's not for us alone to set a time frame. I think Bangladesh would also have to decide how quickly they want the process to be completed. We have been ready to receive them since the 23rd of January, in accordance with the MOU that was signed last November. Is that what you wanted to know? Thank you.
totius universitatis admitto te ad gradum doctoris in jure civili honoris causa.
I think that people assume too readily that we are on the path to democracy, that we're democratizing at a very, very fast rate. It's nothing like that at all. If anybody takes the trouble to read the Constitution, they will be able to understand why we cannot become a genuine democratic society with such a constitution in place.
Amid all the positive developments that we've seen in the last couple of years in your country, there are also some very troubling ones, and I'm thinking particularly of this wave of ethnic violence that has targeted Burma's Muslim community. What is your view of what's been happening there? Some people are calling it ethnic cleansing.
No, it's not ethnic cleansing. It's a new problem, and yet it's linked to old problems as well. I would like to make the point that there are many moderate Muslims in Burma who have been well integrated into our society, but these problems arose last year, and I think this is due to fear on both sides, and this is what the world needs to understand, that the fear is not just on the side of the Muslims but on the side of the Buddhists as well.
But you would accept, wouldn't you, that the vast majority of the victims of the violence have been Muslims? There is evidence that they have been systematically targeted.
Muslims have been targeted, but also Buddhists have been subjected to violence, but there's fear on both sides, and this is what is leading to all these troubles. And we would like the world to understand that the reaction of the Buddhists is also based on fear. I think will accept that there's a perception that Muslim power, global Muslim power, is very great, and certainly that is the perception in many parts of the world and in our country too. So there's this
fear on both sides. You would accept, though, that the scale of the suffering is not equal on both sides. There are something like 140,000 Burmese Muslims displaced from their homes and living in camps. They're the ones who are bearing the brunt of this violence.
I think there are many Buddhists who have also left the country for various reasons, and there are many Buddhists who are in refugee camps for various reasons. You will find them in Thailand, very many of them, and you will find them scattered all over the world. This is a result of our sufferings under a dictatorial regime, and I think if you live under a dictatorship for many years, people don't learn to trust one another. A dictatorship generates a climate of distrust.
But people have to take responsibility for their actions.
Of course, this is what the government has to do, to make sure that there's accountability.
And it doesn't seem as if the government is making people accountable at the moment. I'm thinking particularly of the Buddhist monk Wiratu, who used to be in prison but was then let out, and now he's a very popular, influential figure. He goes around spouting what really is hate speech, talking about Muslims being like dogs and blaming them for stealing Burma's women and things like that. Do you condemn that kind of hate speech?
I condemn hate of any kind, and you're right when you say that the government has not been playing a responsible part in this. And I would very much like to urge you and others to ask the government what their policy is and what they're trying to do, or what they're doing or not doing to improve the situation. We have said from the very beginning that rule of law is essential, it's imperative, because before people can sit down and sort out their differences, they have to feel safe. And if they think that they're going to be killed in their beds, they're not going to talk about harmony or learning to understand one another. So I would say that instead of asking us, the members of the opposition, what we feel about it, what we intend to do about it, because you must see that we are not in a position to do the sort of things that a government must do. You should ask the present government of Burma what their policy is, how they are going about this problem, how they intend to deal with it.
Personally, what have been the difficult things to adjust to in the course of the last couple of years for you? Your life has changed immeasurably.
Quite frankly, I don't think that I'm adjusting to anything very extraordinary. New situations, but no more extraordinary than the ones that I've had to face over the last 25 years.
But picking up the pieces of family relationships, relationships with friends, having contact that you were denied for so long.
Real friends you can always pick up at any time. The friends that are not so true, they fell away a long time ago when it was dangerous to be close to me. But then on the other hand, some come back, and I accept that. I accept that you can't expect people to be outspoken or brave all the time.